Greetings and welcome to another edition of
Positronic.
I'm Barry P. Cook, and I'm here to review Star Trek Discovery Season 3, Episode 11. There are only two more episodes left. This one was called Su'Kal, or Su'Kal. This is what I thought of it. My first note that I wrote down is, Gray is back. Yay. I don't like the character. I don't like that plot, and I don't know what it is. Like, I'm a fan of Riverdale. I was a fan of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Both of those shows dealt with teenagers and their love lives, but somehow this one just rubs me the wrong way. I don't know what it is. On Buffy they had the added element of vampires and demons and so forth, and on Riverdale they have the added element of, these murder mysteries and these other mysteries that the characters solve or deal with. That are more real life. They're not super sci-fi or sci-fi. Sabrina the Teenage Witch there, the new one, the Adventures of Sabrina. I really like that. That's a show that deals partly with a teenager and her love life and the love lives of her friends, but again, it's got that supernatural part to it, and in all of those shows, the teenagers are the main focus of the show, so I don't know, it kind of works better than this stupid plot with Adira and Gray, and I don't think they're handling it in a mature way like they do on these other shows. It's treated in a very after-school special kind of way, and I just don't like it. Let me back up and just say the basic plot of this episode is the Discovery finally goes to this nebula where they got the signal from, to find out what's going on with the trapped Kelpian ship, and they find a life sign. They get a life sign reading, and so they hurry up and get there. I'm not sure what they were holding back these last couple of episodes for, why they didn't go. I'm sure they mentioned it, but I don't remember, but all of a sudden there they are. And Michael and Dr. Culber and Saru have to sort of navigate this situation to try and rescue the life sign, which turns out to be a child of the person who had broadcast the distress signal. And at one point, they get to this, when they first get to the nebula, they can't get close enough to figure out the coordinates of the ship. They can't tell them from outside the nebula, and they can't get close enough because they're too big. I didn't understand what that was about, so Booker goes in his ship and gets the coordinates and goes back to Discovery. I couldn't figure out why they did that, but anyway. This planet that's in this nebula where all this is happening is a planet made of dilithium. It's a dilithium planet. And no one found it. The Kelpians did, obviously, but no one else knew it was there. I thought that was strange. There's a funny moment where Saru has to explain to the Admiral that he's made Tilly acting first officer, and he was totally not buying it. But Saru was like, I have every confidence in her, so the Admiral was like, yeah. He totally was not buying it, and I thought that made sense. But this conversation that the Admiral's having with Saru is being had over holocom, and it's 1,000 years later, and these 1,000 years later, and these holocoms have not evolved at all. They've not improved at all. They're still winky or wonky like they were 10 years before Kirk. I don't know. They're a little less transparent, but they still wink out. I thought that was a little strange. At one point, Book asks one of the other ship doctors to look after his cat, and she's like, okay. I was like, oh, so Starfleet doctors are veterinarians now, okay. Maybe that's because they've dealt with that particular alien race that looks like cats. Okay. At one point, I forget who it is, either Michael or Tilly or somebody says they're worried about Saru going on this mission because it involves Kelpians, and I'm like, she's worried about Saru? He's the most stable guy on the ship. Like, why would you worry about him? I didn't get it. Then there's a scene where Michael is telling Tilly about this part of the captain's chair that has like a little nub on it that, Lorca and on the Shenzhou Philippa had sort of, would fidget with when they were nervous about, or less than 100% confident about a situation, and it's there on both ships, on both captain ships, because of a glitch in the manufacturing plant. I'm like, how would there be why would there be a manufacturing plant? Why wouldn't they be replicated? I suppose you can have a glitch in a replicated item, but why did she say manufacturing? I don't know. I guess that's just a word choice. But I just thought it was odd. I didn't quite understand how they pulled this off, but when the three characters that I mentioned earlier get down to the location where they're supposed to be to try to find this child, they don't look like themselves. Dr. Culber looks like a Bajoran, Michael looks like a Trill, and Saru looks like a human. So you get to see Doug Jones without his makeup playing Saru, and they say it's because they're in like a holodeck program, which makes sense to an extent, but I don't see how they would make Saru appear human. You can add spots holographically to a person, and you can add nose ridges and a ceremonial earring to a person holographically, but how do you change someone so they appear human? I mean, I suppose you can, but it would take a lot of processing attention to have their entire face. I don't know. I guess it'll be like putting a hat on a character in a hologram program. I don't know. It just seemed weird to me that he would appear human, because it has to change his, his physiology. Like, for example, when Worf is made into a merry man.
I protest. I am not a merry man.
He doesn't look human. He's still Worf. He's just wearing cowboy clothes. Data still looks like Data. He doesn't, they put a mustache on him, but he doesn't look like Brent Spiner without the makeup. So I thought that was kind of weird. It is 1,000 years later, though, so who knows? What I wanted to know is why they didn't give him a Riker beard. They should have given Saru a Riker beard. That just would have been so cool. One cool thing is I thought that this plot was very Star Trek. A lot of the plots on this show tend not to be very Star Trek. They tend to be very soap opera or very high school, after school special. This was very Star Trek, I thought, because it reminded me of other episodes where the crew beams into a weird situation, like, Sherwood Forest, or they beam into, the Old West, like on the original series, or they beam into a town that is taking up after the 1930s in Chicago, with gangsters and so forth. And this was kind of like that. They beamed into a situation where they're not themselves, they're other people. They have different appearances, and they sort of have to play along with the program. So I thought that was very Star Trek, which was good. They do show a number of moments in this episode where Tilly is shown acting in her capacity as first officer, and they wrote it well, and Mary Weissman performed it well. So I thought that was good. Sometimes, like I said last video on Star Trek, sometimes they get it right, and they got this right. They showed her doing the job. Now, do I think it makes sense that she had the capability to do the job? Not 100%, but I'll buy it. I'll buy that she's been in Starfleet. She is a trained Starfleet officer. She served on the ship a while. I'll buy that she was good enough to handle one confrontation with a bad guy and not screw it up and do a competent job. So I thought that was good. They show during these scenes that Discovery now has cloaking tech, that it was added during the refit, so that's interesting. They'll probably end up using that a lot. The thing, though, is that this, I guess her name is, I forget the bad guy's name, I'll have to put it up on the screen. She says at one point, "Oh, I know you, Tilly. I know what you're like." I'm thinking, how would she know anything about Tilly at all? But I thought the exchange was good between them. But then the story takes a wrong turn where it seems to suggest, and we're going to flesh this out in the next 2 episodes, I guess, but it seems to suggest that the source of the burn, that what caused the burn, is this Kelpian child who's now grown up, physiologically, but they're still a child, caused the burn because when he gets scared, somehow because he's been irradiated to a certain extent by this planet, he somehow was able to send out a shockwave of some kind that disrupts dilithium. How that cascaded across the entire galaxy. I don't know. They haven't said that yet, but I fear this is where they're going because of what they showed in this episode, and I, I don't think I can buy it. So we'll have to see. It just bothered me. One of the things, though, that getting back, because they keep going back and forth during the story to Tilly and this main plot, Tilly the main plot. At one point, Tilly tells this bad guy from the this bad guy lady from the Orion chain that she's going to self-destruct the ship before she lets her get a hold of the ship and the spore drive. And I have to think that was her bluffing, because we all know they can't destruct the ship because of the sphere data that won't allow that to occur. So I'm hoping that when the writers wrote that, they wanted us to take it as her bluffing, because we know she can't blow up the ship. The only other note that I have is I'm wondering how the bad guys ended up getting on board, because they do get on board Discovery. And the episode sort of ends in a cliffhanger where, Michael and Culber and Saru have to somehow get control of Discovery back because it's been taken over by the Emerald Chain. Well, how did they do that with the shields up? That's going to have to be demonstrated to me, because I don't understand how they managed to get on board. That's really all I have to say about this episode. I didn't think it was that good. There were some good moments. Part of the plot was more Star Trek than the plots of this show usually are, but it wasn't anything fantastic. It's still a lame excuse for a Star Trek show. We'll see what next week brings, and I'll be here to tell you about it. Until then, I say once again, my friends, peace and long life.